So I had a guy who was the finance director for a massive electrical organization. And so one of his jobs was to go to the stock exchange and present the quarterly figures and numbers, the forecast for the organization and where the company is at, talking to the shareholders, looking at the kind of future forecasting. Hated it. And it was getting progressively worse, not better. So he came to see me because he had the experience of just having to, they decided it would be a good idea if he were to do a briefing for the staff, and this one was for senior management. They wanted to roll the idea out. So for any of the staff who were interested, he would go down and do a mini version of the stock exchange briefing before he went to the stock exchange. The company thought it was a great idea. He hated it, but didn't say that because, of course, this is his job. He's very, very senior, head of finance for this global organization. So he books a breakthrough session with me, a one-day breakthrough session. And I remember laughing as he's going out the door, and he said, all I need now is a presentation to practice on. And I said, be careful what you wish for. And, waved him off, closed the door. Next day, he says, Marilyn, you're not going to believe this. He said, I got back into work and they've decided that rather than just do the senior management team, they're just going to roll out the idea where I present to staff. Because what had happened previously, he'd done the presentation, which was a very small number of people, and he had the rabbit in the headlights thing where he started to speak and present, had the whiteout. His colleague who was in the room saw what was happening, came up and rescued him, and said, well, one of the things we want, and kind of double-handed it for him. But it was the first time that he'd really publicly been outed, because normally he could just, have sleepless nights. And sometimes he'd know about these things 3 or 4 months in advance and would not be able to sleep. So he would be able to kind of mask it and just grit his teeth and get through it. But by his own admissions, his presentations were very dull, D-U-L-L. So he had the rabbit in the headlights thing, which was then a cue for him to say, I've got to sort this out. So he came to see me. So they arranged this staff briefing. He goes and does a staff briefing. The guy who rescued him is pretty much standing there, as on hand for, he was expecting it to happen again. So he's on hand to come in and double hand and rescue him and bump him off the stage. And he does this briefing, he does this presentation the day after the breakthrough session. And staff were coming up and going, oh my God, I thought I'd be really boring, but I really enjoyed that. Are you going to do this again? I really think this should be a regular thing. Thank you for that fantastic presentation. It was amazing. Thank you so much. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So he went from super stressed to zen to actually, I'm really enjoying this. And I distinctly remember when we got to the part of doing some stuff with timeline therapy, he was like, oh, not really, because he thought it was all going to be very, almost like an academic lecture is what he was expecting. He wasn't necessarily thinking about working on thoughts and beliefs and past traumas. And weirdly, the past trauma had something to do with a kind of a child. But it all just blew his mind in terms of what we were working on. But when he decided then, okay, I'm here now, let's just go with it, it was a dramatic change. And that was my first that was probably back in 2002, maybe 2003, something like that. And I was like, man, this is amazing. I want to do more of this.